Bonjour tout le monde, comment ça va? Je m'appelle Ezekiel et aujourd'hui pour cette vidéo, I'll be talking about the top 6 traps in King of Thieves. So, you see what I did there? Put a bit of both some French and English into that intro. So, just before we start the video, I actually did take a look at the comment section for the last video, which was Meet the Golden Blaze, and I was actually quite surprised to see that over half of you guys were actually, you're French, so that's actually really cool. So I will try to integrate more, les phrases en français dans ces vidéos, mais, there's a lot of people that also didn't like that because they probably didn't understand what I was talking about. But don't worry, I'll try to figure something out. Like, for now, I'll just implement some French into these videos, but maybe at some point I'll either do a separate French series or I'll just make a French channel, like one or the other. But anyways, on to this video. So before we get started, I know another interruption. Let me just say that every single trap has their own unique pros and cons, and depending on the layout of any base, any of the traps can be, they can be either the best or the worst for that particular design. So right about now, you should see a giant table of all the pros and the cons that I've come up with for the 6 traps. So I have one for the Secret Bird, the Saws, the Cannon, the Homing Cannon, the Red Guard, and the Spinner, along with all of the actual traps themselves on the right side of the screen. So you can see how every single trap evolves into. So they start out all simple, then the second tier they get a bit of gold, somewhere along their design, and then the final design is the diamond/crystal kind of look to them. So I'll let you guys kind of pause the video so that you guys can actually read this, because I will not be talking about these things in this video, because I'll just be talking about the traps as they are and how they stand, but I may mention these things as I go along. So let's start with the number 6. And by the way, I know that, don't take it the wrong way. Just because this is the 6th trap that I'm about to mention does not make it the worst trap. It's just in terms of how I like them. So coming into number 6 is the Saw. So that's actually the spinning, kind of blade looking thing. Now, the reason why I put this as the 6th choice for the best traps is because, it's just very plain. All it does is that it's a stationary trap. It pretty much, it's almost just like a block that can hurt you in a sense. So it really doesn't do anything super cool in the game. I mean, like, yeah, it can do some things. It can make you, it can force you to jump, and depending on how you place it, it can actually be very good to block off certain paths to your chest, but it's just very boring. It's just like, it's just a blade that sits there and, intimidates you. It's probably one of those traps that doesn't disappear too, often, or either that or it's just the opposite, where it disappears very quickly, just because, it does not move. That's why it's just very boring to me. But, yeah, that's just the main reason why I don't like the Saw. Now, it's a very good trap, like I mentioned. It's just that, it doesn't move. Now, coming into number 5 is the regular cannon. Now, the reason why I put the regular cannon as number 5 is that it's, it's not as bad as the Saw. Now, it can be used for, long distances, either from left to right to left. I don't think it can go... Actually, yes, it can. Can it go up and down? I think it can, so it should be able to go down and up and down. So, some more cons about this, which is why I put that at number 5, is that, there's a slight gap in between every single shot, and usually in most bases, you can't really use the cannon for, too many things. It's more just kind of like, it's something that keeps the players either jumping or avoiding, if you know what I'm talking about. So, the cannon, it's, nothing too super unique. It's just kind of just your main, I guess, long-distance shooter. So I guess that is a pro, though, because you can use it you can cover an entire line or column of, your base, and then just keep it well protected. And another thing that I guess is another minor thing, is that the cannons can't shoot through walls. So, it's physics, of course, but still, it doesn't do that. So coming into number 4 is the red guard. Now the reason why I put this particular trap somewhere in between, my chart of the top 6 is that the red guard is actually not that bad. Now it's pretty much just a saw that's able to move, but that's pretty much the reason why I put it as number 4. It's I'm not sure if its hitbox is slightly larger because it's a bigger trap, of course, versus the trap itself, versus the saws, I should say. But the red guard's actually not that bad. I've seen it used a lot, mostly in spawn trap bases, and some people consider the red guard to be a lot harder to avoid versus the homing cannon, and I have yet to test that out for myself, but for the moment that's what I've just heard other people say. So since the red guard is capable of moving versus just, it's basically just a moving saw like I said, you can use this in a lot of different combinations, and one cool thing about the red guard is that you can actually change its distance as well as its speed. So, the shorter distance, the faster it will move back and forth, and the longer the distance, the longer it will take for it to go from one point to the other. So the red guard can go up and down, left to right, but, other than the fact that it's just a super large moving saw, nothing too special about it. Now, coming into number 3 is the Seeker Bird. Now, the reason why I put the Seeker Bird as number 3 is that originally I put it as number 2, but then I read some things, on the forums about the other traps, like the spinner and the homing cannon, which I'll talk about later. But I feel that the Seeker Bird is kind of, it's pretty good, but at the same time, it's not too good. So it's very much like the red guard a little bit. So it's a lot smaller than the red guard, so it's actually easier to avoid. But it's not locked on to just moving in 2 different directions, back and forth. It can actually move all over the screen and follow you around. So one thing that I like about the Seeker Bird is that it eliminates camping and stalling, and also thinking, because, when you're raiding bases, and if you're able to just stand, either against a wall or something like that, then it gives the player enough time to really think about what they want to do next. But if you have a Seeker Bird, it actually forces them to keep moving, so it just keeps the pressure on them, as well as, timing. Timing is very important. But at the same time, the Seeker Bird's probably slightly worse than the red guard in terms of its size. Because the Seeker Bird is a lot smaller than the red guard, its hitbox is a lot, it's smaller as well, so it's very easy to avoid. And especially in really large spaced areas, it's very easy to avoid the Seeker Bird. So now coming into number 2 is the spinner. Now the spinner is actually probably one of my more favorite traps, just because of, I actually like using the spinner in a lot of my bases, but again, that's not what I'm talking about. So the spinner is very unique. It's actually the only trap that can move in a circular motion, and you can actually change the size of how it moves in its little, its circumference, so to speak, by changing its radius size. So the spinner, another reason why it's so unique is that it's probably, it can be one of the fastest traps in the game. If you increase the radius size by a large ridiculous number, then you can actually have the the spinner move at almost lightning speed, so much faster than any other trap in the game. Now, of course, it moves in a circular motion, so there will be cons. Some cons is that in the center of, inside of its circumference, where it's moving around, there's a massive gap, so there's a lot of space, so to speak. So if you get inside of, the circle of the spinner, then it's really easy to avoid. As well as, if it's moving very slowly, or, there's going to be opportunities where there's going to be a massive gap between the spinner, so that's really easy to pass through him, so that's just another thing about him. But overall, the spinner is just very unique. It's the only trap that can move in a circle. That's pretty cool, very useful, and depends on the layout, but it can either be very good or very bad, just depends how you see it. I've seen some people put the spinner as number 6 in some of the voting on the forums. I'll actually put that somewhere in the video later on, just to show you guys some of the, forumers' opinions on this. But anyways, yeah, this is the spinner in a nutshell. And coming into first place, and I know it's very obvious, it's the homing cannon. So, there's some debates on the homing cannon that it's either one of the best traps and also one of the worst traps. It just depends on how you see it. Personally, I think it's one of the better traps versus the spinner. And again, like all of these things, like the top 6 traps that I'm just mentioning, by no means is the saw the worst trap, and by no means is the homing cannon the best trap. I'm just saying this, just as my own preference. But each trap is very unique and can be used in different situations. Just keep that in mind. Just remember that. Anyways, the homing cannon, the reason why it's so good is that it's a combination of almost every single other trap except for, well, it could be a little bit the spinner, but not really. So it's part of the saw because it's a stationary trap, just like the cannon. It's like the cannon because it can shoot long distances. It's like the seeker bird because its shots can follow you. Well, it doesn't follow you necessarily. What it does is that the homing cannon points towards you and then shoots the cannon shot, but the shot just goes straight. It's kind of like the red guard, just because, well, I don't know, it's more useful close range than it is long range. And then it's somewhat like the spinner just because it's able to turn around in a 360 degrees motion. So the homing cannon is very versatile. You can use it in so many different cases, but as its own trap, it's very good because, a trap that follows you around but can be, doesn't necessarily follow you around like the seeker bird. Its shots follows you where you're moving, so it's very hard to, it can be either very hard to avoid or very easy to avoid, depends on how you see it. But the homing cannon is used for a lot of different things, like, super jumps. You're probably going to see the homing cannon, mostly in spawn jumps is the homing cannon the most popular thing in, but things like that. So really, the homing cannon is just such a good trap overall. I mean, sometimes it can be pretty bad because it's very easy to walk past it in some cases, but most of the time you're going to find yourself, especially if you're running towards a homing cannon, a stationary homing cannon, if it's like pitched on a corner or the ground, it's very hard to avoid that in some cases. But anyways, guys, that's just my top 6 traps for you. Now, I realized I didn't actually speak French in this whole video, but I guess that's okay, just because I really see... Mais il n'y a pas vraiment une chance où je peux vraiment parler en français sans, make sense so that I can actually make sense in the video. Because I already told you guys, my French is not really at par. Even though I studied it for a very long time, I actually don't really practice it that much. So that's the thing right there. So yeah, guys, that is just my video for the top 6 traps. Now, if you guys have any other opinions on the 6 traps, the seeker bird, the saw, cannon, homing cannon, the red guard, or the spinner, and you have some information to share, maybe your own opinions on your own order, yeah, how about that? Like, in the comment section below, let me know, guys, what your order of the best traps is. I like to see what you guys are thinking. And I think, since I'm just gonna give you guys the usual conclusion of the video, I'll show you guys the montage of all the forumers that participated in the vote, so you can see their opinions on what they thought were the best traps, and maybe that'll help you decide on your own decisions. And, yeah, so for this video, let's try to hit 150 plus likes. I know it's a little bit large for, the usual kind of setup, but I'm pretty sure we can hit that. So don't forget to like the video, comment in the video for, which traps are your favorites, and don't forget to subscribe, because we're actually really close to 50,000 subscribers. I'm actually really excited for that. And if you guys also want to see that, the table of, the pros and the cons, I'll put it right about now so that you guys can see that once again, if you're wondering. But other than that, I think that's going to be it for this video. So, merci pour l'écouter cette vidéo et je vais vous voir dans le prochain. See you guys then.